increase in crimes recently have confirmed that the country's justice system is in dire need of a boost. In fact, according to the Forensic Science Laboratory, the current DNA backlog stood at more than 170,000 cases. What this means is that there are plenty of criminals roaming free, probably reoffending, and this is due to a lack of DNA evidence not being able to be presented in court. So the Action Society, a pressure group, has expressed its concerns regarding this, and the group's spokesperson, Renee Pretorius, joins us now to discuss this matter further. Renee, thanks a lot for joining us this evening. Now, according to this report, no DNA evidence has processed or was processed for the months of January and February 2021. The current DNA backlog stands at over 170,000. What reason has been given for this conundrum?
Yes, good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, we as Action Society are very, very important. If you just look at this number that you just mentioned now, 172,787 for the backlog. And as you mentioned, nothing has been done in January and February in terms of the DNA evidence being tested. And so the reasons given earlier in the year and also on Tuesday, they range from, for instance, the DNA boards struggle to sort out issues including procurement of DNA chemistry and consumables, dysfunctional contract management, poor leadership with SAPs, and IT challenges caused by an ongoing legal dispute. But that's not the whole picture. The management system used in the recording and management of any handover processes, this whole DNA tracking evidence, this whole tracking system, that system has been down since middle of last year, which means that everything is now being done manually. And that poses a really, really big problem. So there are many challenges that they're facing. And if you just think last year, end of November, this number in the backlog stood at 117,000 only. And it's a few months later, and it's at 172,787. Doesn't predict anything good for the rest of the year.
Let's go into exactly what this means, Renee, because DNA profiling we know to be one of the most successful prosecutorial tools to identify rapists as well as violent criminals. Where or who is the weak link in this matter? I mean, you've earmarked the SAPS, you've earmarked the Forensic Sciences Laboratory, but really who takes a final accountability for this matter?
Well, at the moment, I think you're asking the question that we're all asking. We all would like to know, Action Society specifically would also like somebody to take responsibility for this. And so at the end of the day, it is government's responsibility to make sure that this backlog is addressed and we don't see. Well, we're hopeful. When we looked at the plans that they have presented, they've spoken about a new system being developed, etc. But at this moment, we don't really see how this is going to be solved soon by anybody. So we have some suggestions, but we can't see who's going to be taking that further at the moment.
Does this phenomenon risk bringing the justice system to its knees?
It definitely is, because we, as I just mentioned, we as Action Society, we're specifically concerned about three things. We're really concerned about the rising numbers, and we don't see the end in sight, an indication of these numbers slowing down. And secondly, as you mentioned, criminals are roaming free, probably reoffending, because there's no DNA evidence being able to be presented in court. And something that's very close to us as Action Society's heart is, thousands of rape cases might not be submitted to court because of this compounding backlog at the laboratories. And so we see two solutions going forward. Firstly, government really needs to take responsibility for this. It is their obligation to really make sure that these victims see justice in the end. And also, we really want to urge government to also consider partnerships between government and private labs, which have the resources and the capacity, and that they should be given the opportunity to assist the government, or rather the forensic science labs, with the processing of the current backlog, as well as the other challenges and shortcomings that they might be facing. So we really want to urge government to consider utilizing these resources of the private labs.
Renee, as you and I are talking, I mean, we're speaking about failing systems, processes, even possible lack of resourcing. But one thing that is very pertinent is around the victim who never gets to see justice, or the victim who could possibly know who their perpetrator is, look at their perpetrator in the eye and know for a fact that they're not going to prison simply because of a lack of DNA evidence. The trauma and the impact that that has on an individual, are we able to even count or even comprehend that at the moment?
No, I think you're asking a very, very, very serious question, and that is, in the end, the main thing is that justice is just not being served. And even if there's delayed justice is no justice at all. And so, as we've mentioned, this evidence tracking system that has not been reinstituted, the recording of these handover processes are so important when it comes to court cases. And so this track and tracing of person to person, person to storage location, all these things are now being handled manually by means of a paper registrar. And so this is not a practical solution, as it becomes so problematic when evidence is presented in court or needs to be tracked. And so, as you mentioned, it must be so traumatic for these victims, and there are thousands of them. And so we are really concerned that so many of these cases will just be thrown out and never see the day in court, and it must be just devastating to all these victims. As you might know, about 117 women are raped in South Africa every single day. And if you look at all these problems that we've just now mentioned, then, the 7.8% conviction rate almost makes sense, as sad as it is. These people that you just now mentioned, these women or these people who have been raped, you mentioned them looking their perpetrators in the eye, knowing who they are, and knowing full well at the moment that in the current justice system, only 9 out of these 16 women that are raped every day, only 9 of those of the perpetrators are ever convicted, and that is an enormous problem, and it breaks our heart. And we're really hoping that we will see some solution and some wheels of justice starting to turn in the coming months.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears, Renee. We'll leave it there for this evening. Thanks a lot for joining us on that matter. Renee Pretorius there from Action Society.